I'm like, well, maybe we're not closed. Maybe we're just trying to survive.
Yeah, right? Okay, get out then. Get out. I told you.
Where are you at, Ryan? Are you in Seattle?
Coming to you from sunny Phoenix, Arizona.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking that long journey to get here and to be with us. I wish you could bring some sun with you because we're kind of overcast right now.
Yeah, we are.
We got a sun to spare. It's gonna be
No, we're
105
fine.
today. All the windows are shuttered up all the way. We're hiding in the AC.
So this is just the normal day for you, is to be shuttered inside away from the burning, scorching sun.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think that's why we invented snowbirds, though, really. I think it's a really wonderful idea.
So all I hear is that we're all staying with you, Ryan, during the winter.
Yeah, exactly.
That space. Bring a sleeping bag.
I'll bring one for you. I'm taking your bed.
We'll see.
I'm older.
We got a food town.
Johan, you shouldn't be so ageist.
Hey, if I can use my perks in any way, I will. I do love the chat feature.
Okay, cool.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Brew some coffee.
Ducky, I think your audio's not working.
Oh. He did warn us about that. I have a little bit of a whiteboard jealousy going on here. That's pretty awesome. I have no whiteboard at my home office right now. So I feel like I can't come up with ideas without a whiteboard.
It's just impossible.
Yeah, it's just
doesn't
like,
happen.
I think you just named something that I've not known I've suffered from until the moment you named it, and that's whiteboard envy.
whiteboard and envy is a real thing. It's like the bigger the whiteboard, the more you feel like you can just have all the ideas.
Oh,
Not like they're good, but you know, there's more of them.
there are no bad ideas, Lee.
How about now? Am I finally audible?
There we go.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Is it loud?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, okay. Basically, scary loud?
Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Sounds good, all right. Well, I think it might be a good time to get started. What do you think?
Yep.
I think so too. All right, sorry it took so long to get my audio fixed up. Good morning, everyone. It's 1 Million Cups. My name's Eric, and this is my very first time emceeing, so please be kind and gentle as we go through this. As you know, this is a Kauffman Foundation event. It happens every Wednesday. Please mark it down on your calendar. And don't be afraid to download the app right now and check in. That really helps us out to know who's here. And also, we have a lot of social media and meetup opportunities for you to go see what's going on and know what the next meeting is going to be about. So see us on social if you can. So the 1 Million Cups community is really about sharing, offering, asking. These are all about communicating. And we're going to communicate as a group of entrepreneurs so that we can build a community that supports ourselves. And the way we go about doing this is by being a little different than other other organizations. We're going to do presentations, not pitches. We're trying to connect people together and not just do some kind of schmaltzy networking. And the people who are helping create this event are community members working for the community. But most importantly, I think, is that we try to be, and we are, radically and intentionally inclusive. We want to hear from everybody, and we think everyone's opinion and ideas and concepts are worth hearing. So this will happen, by the way, across the whole nation today, in each time zone. So you can get up and go virtually get on others if you'd like. We can help you out if you want to see some others during the week or on Wednesday mornings. But there's over 150 communities doing this with a lot of attendees. But look at this, there's a lot of people who volunteer to make this happen. And each week that group of people is working so that there's an education, inspiration, and connection between entrepreneurs. Our particular Seattle community is sponsored by Seattle Strong, a coffee group that sells here in town, and then a small studio. We couldn't do this without them. And when we get back to our in-person setting, we'll be also back at our host, which is the Collective in downtown SLU. Our volunteers for this, there's 5 of us. This is the group of misfit toys who try to make this work every week. But we could use a little more help, and we would love to have some people join our team and be listed up here each week. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to contact Lacee. All we're really looking for is someone who wants to learn something new, some new skills, and practice them, and has the desire to do this and also be consistent in showing up and being part of the team. So we hope that some of you will find this instructional enough and innovative enough that you'll want to be a part of this group. Today, what you're going to see is, we've had a little bit of coffee and conversation to start, but you're going to see a 6-minute presentation from an entrepreneur. Today, she's going to be coming to us from Iowa, of all places. Afterwards, there's going to be a 20-minute Q&A. And when that's all finished, hopefully we'll break into some small groups and discuss our lives and connect with more people. As we're going through the presentation today, because we are virtual, you'll have the opportunity to raise your hand by clicking on the participants list on your computer or your device and clicking on raise your hand, and then we'll try to get to you in the order that you've raised your hand. So be patient, but we will get to you. So with that said, please welcome Lacee Conley from Conley Consulting and Portfolio Advisors.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
All right, I'm going to switch screens if I can. All right. I'm going to share. Okay, gratuitous picture of my dogs. Let's see.
Welcomed picture. Not all of us have that privilege right now.
Yeah, one is dressed as a bumblebee and the other one was dressed as a moose. So I torture them regularly. So before we start the timer, I usually just like to introduce myself a little bit just because I'm not local. I haven't been around, but I have been to other 1MCs as well as other speaking engagements. So I usually just start by a short introduction. So I'm Lacee Conley. I am a patent attorney. So what I talk about is intellectual property. And I have education in physical chemistry and neuroscience. That was my technical background before I went to law school. I graduated law school in 2 years and got my master's of law in international intellectual property. So that's my specialization. And then this last year, I finished my MBA so that I felt comfortable going out on my own, which now I have instead of just kind of doing the regular law firm model. Okay, so that's a little bit about me and my background, so you have an idea of what I'll be talking about. But the company's name is Conley Consulting and Portfolio Advisors. The big thing that I saw was a real disconnect between inventorship and entrepreneurship and the intellectual property process. the intellectual property process can be very daunting. It can be really challenging, and it's also very expensive. So I've worked for boutique firms where all they do is intellectual property. I've worked for firms where they do every type of law, but this kind of interrelationship between an inventor or a business owner and the attorney, just like, well, the attorney will kind of take over. And what I want to do is bring more of an educational piece to entrepreneurs, to startups, and to companies that have marketing teams and things like that. So they have a baseline education of intellectual property themselves, so that they're ready to start having those conversations instead of doing what I like to call aftermath law, which means that you only go to your lawyer after you have a problem, right? So my goal with our company is to have the traditional law firm model, but then I also do separate trainings for companies, marketing teams, entrepreneurs, whoever wants to listen to me, basically, about how, when, where, and why they should do their intellectual property management. So 3 things that we do, and yes, that is an ear muffler for a dog. It has a patent on it. So the first thing we do is we advise. So that's your typical kind of law firm thing. We advise when and how to grow your IP portfolio. I do a lot of foreign, obviously, because I am an international intellectual property attorney. So if you want a patent in China, I can get you a patent in China. I'll give an example of why you want to have some of that advice. I had a client who signed a non-disclosure agreement with a manufacturer without telling me. And now he's a salesperson for his own invention instead of being the owner. So you want to have someone there to give you that type of advice. We also provide comprehensive analytics and risk assessment. So I will meet with your team, your firm, whatever you have. Marketing teams are usually who I meet with to provide any type of risk assessment to see, okay, here's your new launch, here's your new idea, here's your new invention. Let's see how realistic it is for you and how valuable it'll actually be. So a large part of what we do is IP valuation, which is particularly difficult for some entrepreneurs to do themselves. And the last thing we do is strategize to just ensure that our services are tailored to exactly what the client is looking for, and create a family of patents for you, or a family of trademarks or copyrights or trade secrets or contracts that you need. One example for IPR or for strategizing would be what we call IPR, where I represented a Chinese organization and they were accused of infringing a patent. And so the other side wanted to litigate, and I decided to just go to the US federal government and invalidate their patent. So I help you get around having to do costly litigation if I can avoid it for you as well. 3 ways that we're different, and yes, that is a patent for a Big Mac. I don't have any overhead, so I have 2 associates, a secretary, and a paralegal, but I don't have any, everything we can do remotely. Everything we can do on the computers, things like that. So I don't have any cost. I don't have any business loans, none of that. Second is personalization. Everything is personalized to the client, to that inventor. I want to create that relationship between the intellectual property manager and the inventor, or, you know, if you have a trademark. And the last one really is education as a product. So there's 3 things I do. One is traditional law firm stuff. Okay, cool. And then the second is I manage a vlog called Patents and Prosecco, where I review different types of Prosecco. While drinking said Prosecco, I talk about patents and intellectual property. And then the third thing that I do is, again, the training sessions where I'll actually go into your firm and work with groups and do that type of stuff. So that's my strategy. That's kind of the 3 things that I've been focusing on. The product is called IP EDU. So your training materials, I actually give you materials so that you can reference it after you're done with the training and stuff like that. 5 things to know: is you want to consider privacy, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets whenever you're starting a new business. And that's what I'm aiming to educate entrepreneurs and startups, and again, any type of corporate type stuff with. Okay, and that's what I do. So thank you. Are there any questions? And if you, and this is my contact information, but I also have, these are just things to consider, but I also have just some startup questions if anybody needed some. But that's it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm looking to see if anyone has their hands raised. As of right now, I don't see any. Oh, wait, Keenan.
Keenan.
Hey, how's it going? So I guess the big question a lot of people have is, is my product or is my service kind of patentable? And kind of what defines whether or not you're able to get a patent for something?
Yep. So I get that all the time. Or I would much rather have someone come to me and say, hey, is this patentable? Is this trademarkable? Is this copyrightable? Than assuming that it is, and then investing in a big, chunk for doing a patent that might not be valuable for them. So the service that's offered for that is just a patent search. And you can, the other thing that I get a lot with that is that people will say, well, I've looked and, nobody else is doing it. And my aunt told me that they've never seen anybody do it either, so it mustn't be done. Well, that's not the standard that the federal government uses. They use these things called 102 and 103. And if you're not a trained patent attorney, you don't know what to look for, because it's not just whether the patents are identical, it's whether they are close to identical, or if it would be obvious to do the thing that you are doing based off of previous inventions that are out there. So patent attorneys, good ones anyway, should always recommend that you do a patent search, a trademark search, have the attorney do it, because what they do then, or at least what I do, is I do pretty much an identical search as to what the USPTO does. And then I provide you with a written opinion about whether I think it's patentable. I give you the pieces of other inventions that I think might be problematic for you. And then I also tell you, I think this particular feature or this particular feature is likely to be patentable. And that way you've done your due diligence as an inventor, as an entrepreneur, to have someone do that search for you. So yep, I get that question all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Ragesh, it's your turn, sir.
Hi. Do you recommend people start with a provisional patent, and how well done is the provisional relative to the final patent, right? What is the journey? Is it almost a well done patent, or is it just a bunch of specifications and drawings just pushed through the door to get?
So a provisional patent, the differences between a provisional, like as far as content wise, between a provisional and a non-provisional is that a provisional doesn't have claims. It doesn't necessarily have to have finished rendered drawings. It doesn't have to have an abstract, and there's one other thing that it doesn't have to have, but the big thing is that it doesn't have claims. You really just have the specification. A provisional patent is useful when you really haven't finished what you're working on yet. You've reduced it to practice, you know that it'll work, but you haven't really started manufacturing it yet. You need a year, because that's what you get. So a provisional patent is really a placeholder for a filing date, where you're like, okay, I had this idea on this day, I want a year worth of time to keep developing it, and then in that year time, we'll convert it to a non-provisional. The non-provisional will have more in your specification. It will have your numbering. It'll have your actual drawings. It'll have my affidavit that I'm representing you. And then the biggest thing that it has, that's the most important thing of any patent, is that it'll have your claims. And your claims is what you get patented. The specification, which has all that information in it, if that information is in your claims, that's not what you have a patent on. So that's the really big difference between the two. I recommend doing a provisional if you want that year placeholder time. If you don't want, let's say you don't have the funds to do a full patent prosecution on a non-provisional yet, and you want to take a year to get some more funding. All right, well, let's do a provisional. It's cheaper to do a provisional because there isn't as much to it. And then you have a year to come up with more investors, more funding. Or like I said, if you're just not quite finished tweaking what you're doing yet, that's when you would want to do a provisional. Otherwise, if you have the funding and you have reduced it to practice enough, just do the provisional because you don't need the placeholder. You don't want to waste a year. You want to get on it right away. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I just want to let everyone know that if you're a little bit not wanting to get on screen, you can send me via chat a question and I can ask it for you. We can keep it kind of that way. You can keep a little be on the down low, I guess I'd say. So I think we've got a question though coming from Brad.
Hey, good morning. And being from Wisconsin originally, it's nice to see a fellow Westerner. I'm curious, actually, not specific a legal question, but I'm assuming you've gone to a number of these 1 million cups and what your experience has been of going to many different of these groups and getting your message out.
It's been great. I really like it. Obviously, I really like the model because I keep doing it. There's ones that I've received more valuable feedback than others, obviously. The main model at each one is pretty much the same. You have coffee, you talk about 1MC, and then you go into the presentation and then have Q&A. Usually my Q&A always ends up going over for some reason. I think that's because I think people are getting free legal advice from me, but that's okay. So I've been to Wisconsin and did one, and that was a really small group. They're getting started, and I went to Appleton and then I went to Madison. And so they're kind of just getting on their feet, getting started. And, you know, the presenter is really the one that runs the whole thing, versus I've also done one in Iowa City where I just went, did my thing, and then I like sat down, and then it was back to the coordinator of the group. So the big difference between the ones that I've gone to and this one is that you guys do the breakout sessions, which I think is great. I think that's an awesome idea. And that's something that I'm going to recommend to my own 1MC, that we do that. Because what happens is you have the presentation, and then you might not necessarily remember your question. You might not remember that you even had a question, but then you do at the end, you know, the shower thought, right? Like, I should have said that at that time, but the presentation's over, so now it's awkward to do that. So I like the breakout sessions a lot. So that's been my experience.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Johan, your hand is up.
Thank you. My question is, because I've been to, I've talked to patent attorneys, and I'm curious, what would you say is too little amount to spend on getting a patent attorney to work on something, and what is too much? Like, where I've noticed that I've had people quote me at like $30,000, and people quote me at like, oh, I can do it for $1,000. And I'm like, and so for me, I'm like, and I'm looking at the first attorneys led me to the provisional element, which is great. However, I'm kind of concerned that I'm like, I talk to people, and there's really no one that I've been able to talk to that's been able to say, hey, this is kind of what should be charged.
Yeah, right. So those are the exact questions that I want to answer with IP EDU. Like, what are the costs associated? Because they can be astronomical. I would say if somebody is telling you that they can do a patent, even a provisional, for $1,000, one, they're full of shit, and two, it's probably not going to be of the quality that you really want it to be. I do not know how anybody could do it for $1,000. I'm just going to throw that out there. They must be some kind of special. Now 30,000, that it, you know, would be in not just because your patent isn't just filing it, right? Like, you're not just done when you file it and then like you get a patent. Like, that's not how it works, right? So you have to have the drafting, which can be, you know, I would say my average is 6 to 15,000 usually, just depending on what type of technology is. The more complex the technology, the more money it costs. The more you want into it, the more money it costs. Obviously, the more back and forth we go, the more money it costs. Inventorship or inventor involvement helps with that cost exponentially. So I have some inventors that are very involved and really give me a lot of information so that I don't have to spend as much time drafting. And so then their cost is reduced because my inventors are involved. And I think that if you get more educated on IP, then you are able to have that involvement and then reduce costs for yourself. So yeah, I would say average for a non-provisional is probably going to set you back 6 to 15. It kind of depends on what your location is as well, because bigger cities are obviously more expensive because patent attorneys are more expensive in those areas. But the thing about patent attorneys is that they're federally registered. So I don't have to be in Seattle to be your patent attorney. I can be in Iowa and charge you Iowa prices instead of Seattle prices and do the same thing that they do. So you have to keep that in mind too when you're thinking of a patent attorney. They're federally registered, so they don't have to worry about a bar exam in different states. So yeah, 30,000 is on the high end. If you're working with like software or something though, maybe. 30,000 might also include their fees for prosecution, which is after you file the patent, you're going to have to argue back and forth with the federal government for you to get it, right? And your patent attorney does that for you. Ask them if that cost includes some of that or if it's just drafting alone. If it's just drafting alone, that's a little steep in my opinion. But again, you're in Seattle, like it's going to be a lot more expensive in bigger cities.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lacee, I have a question for you, and it's kind of interesting. When you started off, you gave us a little summary of who you are and how you got to where you are. And you said you were in college, you studied physical chemistry, then you went on and did law, and now you're doing an MBA. So I'm a physical chemist, which is so it's
really?
rare to have two of us in the room. How did that happen? How did you turn from physical chemistry to that?
That's so awesome. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I started in physical chemistry and then my other degree is in neuroscience. I thought maybe medical school is what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure. And then I fell in love with chemistry, so I knew that I wanted to go into research. But unfortunately, when I was 21, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so it was my last year of college. And I spent so much time in the hospital. I spent so much time being sick, still graduated, obviously. But I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to be in the laboratory anymore. I didn't want really anything to do with anything related to just any of that. So I was lost for a little bit, really. But my oldest brother is also a patent attorney. He did pharmacy and then went into law. And so he's like, why don't you go to law school and see if you want to try what I do? And I really like it because I get to communicate a lot. There isn't a really big ceiling of where I can go, where there tends to be in labs a little bit more. And I liked it. So that's what I did. Yeah, I was going to be a chemist and then I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, oddly enough, I had the same feeling about medicine after working in an ER for 4 years. I just decided I don't want to do that after all. So
I don't want to see these four walls every day.
Yeah, that's kind of where I went. Well, fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
That's so cool, though. We will have to exchange information because I never meet
Yeah.
other physical chemists, so that's awesome.
Yep, I'm a quantum guy, so.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Nice. Nice. I actually just did a patent for quantum entanglement, where you set the spins and then you release them, and you're supposed to be able to get it on like a macro scale. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's an ongoing discussion about how you interpret that. So, but that's probably not what this group wants to hear about.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
I see that Murgesh has his hand up. Thank you again for
I
sharing
mean,
it with us.
yeah, just related to what you were just talking, do you specialize in a specific area like physical chemistry, you know, patent drafting, or are you much broader? And how do you market yourself? Do folks come to you from a certain area of the country, or they find you online, or what's the current status?
I get a lot of my personal business. So I worked with different firms and I collected clients kind of through that. And then when I left, they came with me. So I collected some clients that way. And then I also get, I have heavy traffic through my LinkedIn. I don't know why my LinkedIn is so successful, but I have a lot of individuals that'll just reach out and say, hey, you know, I have this trademark. Can we work together? So that's one way that I get business. I would say the majority of my, like, location wise, you're looking at the coasts is where I get most of my business. I do have Midwestern inventors, but they're more agricultural implements. They're more mechanical type implements, which I do. So I feel very confident doing mechanical type applications. Obviously, I feel very comfortable doing chemical applications, and chemical, you know, can go so far. It can go to biomolecules. It can go to small molecule manipulation. I can do nanochemistry, physical chemistry, organic chemistry, any kind of chemistry that you would want me to do. But then I can also, like, I've worked on combines before. So it is a very broad spectrum. As long as you feel competent to deal with that material, or that you can get up to speed with that material, you're allowed to work on it. I've worked on some software, not a whole lot, but some. And then a lot of pharmaceutical. I've worked on some pharmaceutical as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, our next contestant is Leif.
Hey, I won. All righty. Hi, Lacey.
Hi.
So I had a question for you, a bit more about your company. You mentioned kind of a side there that in this industry you're in now, you kind of have less of a ceiling, that you can kind of do way more that you want. So I was kind of wondering, what is your vision for Conley Consulting? Like, where are you headed, and what's your biggest challenge to getting there?
Yeah, so my goal is to keep growing. So like I said, I have a couple associates right now, and I'd really like to have a few more so that I have a really good, solid team so that I can handle larger corporate portfolios, because it's a little bit more difficult to do on my own, obviously. So that's the vision, is to grow, to gain some associates. The big thing too is that I just want more. I invest a lot of energy into my blog and into my vlog because, like, I just want that educational piece so badly. Getting more outreach and higher readership for intellectual property issues, and I try to make it interesting. Like, for example, people are trying to trademark COVID right now. And so I had a whole thing about, like, how that's not going to happen. And that, you know, is interesting. It's topical. I'm trying to do that. And then you get a little bit of education about how trademark law works, you know, in there as well. So I would say vision is growth. Vision is higher readership. Difficulty right now is getting my name out there. I'm just a single person. Marketing that, and then, you know, getting more readership to IPEDU, getting more readership to Patents and Prosecco, having more people on my LinkedIn, more communication, because I need a bigger network, I think, is the biggest problem for me.
Okay. And for this industry, how much is it repeat business?
It's high repeat. It's very high repeat because usually if you have a trademark or whatever on your company and then you start making products, you're going to start trademarking the names of your products and you'll come back. For a patent, we try to make if you get a really good, strong patent, which is what I always like to see, then I'm going to make a family of patents for you so that you'll have continuations and divisionals, because you never really stop inventing. You never stop being an entrepreneur, right? So I would say I've got some very loyal individuals who obviously went from firm to firm with me that are repeat customers, or they'll do a lot of referral. I get a lot of referral.
That makes sense. So yeah, I just was wondering about that because I really appreciate your component of the education side of that. I feel like a lot of people that I've gone to for professional services, I found them through, they wrote a piece about how to make a decision when you're facing decision A versus decision B, or just in general, I like the people that have the heart of a teacher that want to, share it all. So I appreciate that and more of that. And I like the idea of growing that more. I guess for one last thing is,
a lot of patent attorneys try to keep that kind of close to the vest because they're like, well, if I give you too much information, will you really need me? Yes, of course. I mean, there is so much expertise that's needed for patent law. I mean, we take 2 bar exams instead of 1 like everyone else. That's never going to happen. So I think that a lot of attorneys don't want to educate because they're like, oh, okay, well then will they still need me? And mine is, the more I educate you, the more you're going to need me, because the more you realize how complex it is.
Exactly. And I think that's the argument almost every single time, no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, you really need that person with the expertise.
Well, I've got, I think we got time for maybe one more question, and I have a one that comes up a lot in my industry, which is really education, and that is, how much do you think people need to pay attention to the security part? Because I saw the list of things that you talk about. If you're doing a patent, do you need to worry about making sure you're compliant with all the proper securities, like FERPA if you're doing education, or HIPAA if you're doing medical? Do you help your clients do that?
Yes. Yep. So I help basically A to Z. So the minute that you come in, you've got a prototype maybe. I am working on your contracts. So like your non-disclosure agreements with manufacturers, I do that for you. If you start doing a website and you need a privacy agreement and you need terms of use, I do that for you. So those types of things to really protect that. Once you get a trademark, I'll tell you when to change your TM to an R or your copyright to a C with a circle, things like that. What else? Yeah, I mean, the only thing that you really need to do with your patent, if you're not going to keep it a trade secret, because the trade-off for a patent is you're giving this disclosure, this public disclosure, in order to get a 20-year monopoly on that invention, right? So the part of that is the public disclosure, but that's kind of scary, you don't really want to do that, because what if somebody sees it and likes it, or what, and then you end up in litigation or something like that? Is it better to keep it as a trade secret than to have it as a patent? That's where your attorney should come in and guide you into, okay, well, if you're going to keep it a trade secret, here are the measures that you have to take in order for it to be by a court to be a trade secret versus not a trade secret and not confidential and usable by the public. So your attorney, I know all those standards because I was trained in them. And that is something that your attorney should absolutely navigate for you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think then I need to grab back the screen here.
Okay.
I'm doing that.
Stopped my share.
And am I being... Can you guys see that screen or no?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay. I have requested this. Share screen. There we go.
There we go.
Fantastic. So one of the things that we like to ask our presenters when they're finished is a few questions. And one is, what can the 1 Million Cups community do for you?
Yep. And what's so cool is that each time that I've gone to 1 Million Cups, my answer has changed in some way or been modified in some way. Because I'm learning every time that I do a 1MC of like, oh, that's, such a great suggestion, or, that's something that I hadn't thought about before. So something that I think the 1 Million Cups community can do for me is, one, referrals. If you know someone that needs a patent attorney, tell them that you met this random girl and she's actually pretty good at what she does. And then the second is, I want more ideas of how to establish myself as an expert in this area. So like I said, I started a blog because I was like, okay, at least I can get information out there, but how do I get interest in it, and how do I keep interest in it? Because it's not a sexy topic. I'll admit that. So just how do I build that network and continue to get Conley Consulting to be equated with intellectual property education? I did the blog, so I think that's helped a little bit. And then I started doing the training sessions, which I think has helped a little bit too. But if you have other ideas, I would love that.
Hi, okay, well, great. Thank you. I think that hopefully some of our friends here will be able to help you out in the future and maybe during your time with our breakout rooms. So here's something that we like to ask everyone at the end of our sessions as well, is what can you do for us? Well, there's a simple answer, and that is, if my computer will play. Here it is. What can you do? You can bring a friend next week. There we go. E-bring, as we like to say. We'd like to see more people here. We'd like to see more people involved. And of course, we also would love to have you, if you're interested, come and present. Do you have an idea? Are you trying something new? Are you willing to ask for help? If you are, then please apply to present at 1 Million Cups Seattle. And that being said, we're all finished with the presentation, and it's time for our control expert, which I think is Victor, to set us into breakout. But everyone, let's give a round of applause, virtual applause to Lacee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's
Really informative. Yeah. I
That's
just
the goal.
I on the on when you mentioned about like ideas to be an expert, I was just off the top of my head was thinking about partnering with schools or education, university. I wonder if you could like somehow go in and almost, do a guest lecture or something like that. It's
Okay.
an idea I was just thinking about.
I like that.
Yeah.
So I am a professor at Drake Law. So I teach at Drake Law, and they've done some CLE things and stuff like that. But I haven't really thought of partnering with like incubators and things like that.
Mhm.
So I think that would be useful, and then just other schools outside of my own, obviously. But okay, awesome, thanks.
Yeah. I will create the breakout rooms. We'll have 2 to 3 participants per room, and then from there you could just have the conversations that you want to have. So with that, we will see you later.
Everyone, maybe see you in a
Bye.
second.
Yep.
So I work at an ad agency. Hey, Victor.
Hey.
Hey, Victor.
You do Google ads, Facebook ads, all that good stuff.